Well, my advice to patients that have a problem is, number one, identify it quickly. Don't delay. Face the problem, admit there's a problem, get help.
I think it's important for couples who are trying to have a child at the beginning to realize that normally it takes a little time to have a baby. If a couple gets married today, they may not be pregnant in a month or 2 or 3. It could take 3, 4, 5 months. So that any fertility treatment, to determine whether it's effective or not, does take a few months.
You need to be in the mindset that it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. And you need to approach each procedure that you go through within the context of knowing that it could be a long race. And I think mentally, if you can be braced for that with one another and in how you communicate, not placing unrealistic expectations on every turn or every conversation or every response that your spouse is having, and that
or every procedure you go through.
Or every procedure that you go through, that will hopefully help provide a little bit of pace and tempo that may make it a little bit more manageable to cope with.
When you're starting off, get educated, get into good medical care, and get empowered in terms of really knowing what to ask and how to make decisions as a couple.
Bring a notebook.
Oh, that's a great tip.
Yeah, bring a notebook to your doctor's appointments. Write everything down, because you're going to forget it, because it's very overwhelming.
Yeah.
So, and I don't think we brought a notebook to our first appointment, and I think we left thinking, what just happened? So bring a notebook and write questions down between your appointments, because you're not going to remember them necessarily.
I mean, I think you want to be as well informed as you can about what you're about to be doing, but try to have a life.
To not lose themselves in the science or the technology, to not make it just the pursuit of a pregnancy, but to remember that they are an individual, that they're as well as they can be part of a couple trying to build a family.
Remember what you're trying to do and remember the end result, because one way or another, it's possible to have a child, whether you have it yourself or you adopt, and it's so easy to forget that when you are going through this.
Make sure that you and your partner are on the same page.
Right.
Keep communication open.
Right.
You know, don't bottle up your feelings. And you know, if you guys aren't on the same page, then it's going to make the journey so much harder.
Right.
So much more difficult.
Right. And remember why you got married, because you've hopefully married your best friend, and that's who you have to go through this with.
I would say remain optimistic, but also know that you're going to run into stresses that you might not be able to foresee, and they're surmountable. You can cope with these stresses.
The other thing that I would encourage couples to do is to get support.
This is very frightening, it's frustrating, you're out there alone, it's an emotional roller coaster for the patient.
That you're not alone, that there are probably 1 to 10 couples presently struggling with this in the United States right now. So think of the people in your environment that you don't know who are struggling with this.
And that is very important, because we all want to feel better about what we're doing and feel better that it's okay to be infertile.
Find a doctor that you have a really good rapport with. Get yourself into some sort of support group so you'll know that you're not the only couple out there going through what you're going through.
Find a support group. Find a support group. Family and friends are incredibly well-intentioned. They have every one of your good thoughts at heart. They just, if they've not been through it, you need to find people who've walked your path.
Pick and choose the friends. I mean, some of your friends are going to be able to be supportive and some won't.
And voice your needs, because people aren't mind readers. So set boundaries with your family if you need to set boundaries, or ask for more if you need to ask for more, but really, really say voice your needs.
Don't stick with the therapy too long if it's not working. I mean, the idea is not to have beautiful temperature charts. The idea is to have a baby, or it's not to make 10 follicles a month, but it's to have a baby.
The other thing I think that is very important is to have a game plan, to know where you're heading, that it's not just every month, okay, now what are we going to do, and it's a scramble and it's a panic.
Have a finite plan or something that you're going to stick relatively close to, financially, insurance-wise, because it is an emotional roller coaster and you're going to need to pull off of it at some point.
Not that you can know everything, tests, change, decisions and all that, but to have a general game plan to make sure that you're communicating well with the doctor so that you know what he or she is thinking. And then, as the time unravels, then to sit down and say, okay, we've been working this game plan, does it still make sense? And not just to do it automatically because that's what was laid down, but that constant reevaluation, and then check in, have my needs and feelings and desires changed? And if not, then continue the game plan. If they have changed, okay, then how do we make our changes?
Every month is critical in the couple's eyes, and obviously devastating if it doesn't work. But my advice would be, to the best ability that a couple can, is to appreciate the fact that in humans, reproduction is inefficient.
That it's a disease, it's not something you're doing that's causing this, and that it needs medical attention, which is what they're getting, but that it has a real emotional component, which involves a lot of loss and grieving.
I wouldn't wish infertility on my worst enemy. I really wouldn't. It was so painful. But bottom line, infertility gave me my children. Infertility gave me a person I like too. Learning to deal with loss. I think we learn a lot from our losses. We learn to become more empathic, and we learn to feel for people who are dealing with many different kinds of losses than we ourselves are feeling. And if we haven't experienced large loss in our lives, it's very hard for us to develop that empathy, I think.
Just do what's true to your heart, and you'll never go wrong. You and your husband are the only ones you have to answer to. Not your parents, not your sisters, not your brothers, not your friends, not your clergy. No, you have to answer to you and your husband and what's right for your marriage, and that's all.
The outlook is good. We have a lot of excellent treatments. We have the ability to offer hope to a lot of couples. So I would urge people to hang in there, because their fertility problem could end in a nanosecond.
So one day, whether it's through birth, whether it's through the help of a surrogate or third-party reproduction, or through adoption, or finding the joy of a family of two, you and your spouse, you will have the family you were meant to have.
Remember the end result, because it's pretty amazing.